So, a little bit about our speaker. I don't know, do I have a sheet? No, okay. I know, yeah, I know. So Robert and I have known each other since the groups first started because it wasn't our first meeting, but I think it was our second or third. Someone else from this group, a friend of mine, had referred him to me, and so he calls me, and I'm in the car, I'm working, driving, and we get to talking, and I said, "Hey, would you like to speak for our group tonight?" And he was like, "Was it tonight, the same day, or was it the next day?" I like to exaggerate. I'll say tonight.
Tonight's a better story.
Yes, a way better story. And he's like, okay, where is it? And he put like a really awesome, impressive presentation together. So I was really impressed. And so we've known each other for a long time. We've done business together. I've referred business to him and all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, so in a nutshell, the great thing about Robert is, for those of you that are realtors, if you refer a client to him, he incentivizes it in that he'll return that client back to you if they want to sell that property. So that's kind of nice.
That's
and
actually
he
how I
has.
got my property manager's license, because
Yeah.
I would refer my clients and then they would disappear.
Yeah. And that's horrible,
So
right?
if you don't want to manage properties, but you want to keep your investors, just take care of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know exactly what they're going to cover today, but I'm excited to hear about it. I know kind of the topic, but who knows? You're
I'm
always.
not sure what it is either, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, that concerns me.
That's funny. So come on up, Robert,
Yeah, get out there.
for PMI, Property Management.
All right.
And there's a
This is
water
mine.
there for you if you need it.
Yeah, I already got one there.
And if you
Is
click
this-
down, if you
Okay.
click
All right.
down, I think.
So,
Yeah, down goes.
I'm Robert Hughes. I'm the broker owner of PMI Reno. My wife and I own PMI Reno. We've been in business for 10 years here in Reno. I wasn't always in real estate. I worked for a retail company out of Utah for 21 years before that. I got a little bit of experience in large scale, commercial real estate, working with my boss who was buying large stores or leasing out new locations for stores, and then I was doing the merchandising setups and everything with it. But my wife and I decided we wanted to do something on our own, and we decided to start a property management business. We bought it into a franchise, PMI, Property Management Inc., and moved to Reno, which we never lived in before, and started it. And currently we have 600 and, Austin, how many? 630 or 50 doors under management. I've got a staff of about 14 working for us, and we've learned a lot and still learning. So if you have any questions or anything you want to find out more about us, or just have questions about your own property, just give us a call. We're willing to. I did. Got some right over there. So, anyways, our company also just went through rebranding. Some of you might have remembered the Gold Shield, and it's now a doorway, opening doors of opportunities for people. So, yeah. So, down. There we go. Legislative update. So most of you know that every 2 years, all our elected officials come in, meet in Carson City and start screwing things up. But this year, we dodged a bullet. There's a lot of things that they presented 2 years ago that got vetoed. This year they didn't quite present as much, but they still presented some things, and a lot of things either didn't pass or our governor vetoed those things in the right direction to protect investors and landlords like you. So I just want to kind of go over some of the key things that changed. So, and then you can always go online and look up what's changed if you want to dig through all of it. But I'm going to give you kind of a highlight of it. So there's only really two bills that we're going to really focus on. I'll just cover the rest of them real quickly. AB 396, dealing with auxiliary dwelling units and HOA rental restrictions, just allowing the some of the properties in certain areas that you're allowed to build up to two. Basically, we're talking about a separate unit on your property. You'll have to kind of dig into more what rules you can and can't do, but this allows a little bit more to create a little bit more, which I think a little bit more affordable housing. AB 458 just talking about net solar metering for affordable housing. You can dig into that more if you want to. Also, same thing with the Governor's Housing Act is just creating more funding and a what do they call it, council to help manage that money to help build more affordable housing for our state. Everything that's effective July 1st, which means it's effective now. Manufacturing housing, just with the mobile homes, you got to have disclosures for mobile home parks. You got to list the management and contact information. Allows requiring tenants to maintain lots with notice. Which, if you ever been through a mobile home park, yeah, it can be sometimes interesting, and this gives a little bit more power to the mobile home park or owner or manager to enforce, keep it clean and not be a junkyard. Deceptive trade practices. This just means there's more penalties if you lie and cheat. So just don't lie and cheat. Somehow I got that on there, so pay attention to that. Don't lie and cheat. Religious. This is a little bit more, as a landlord, you got to pay attention to a little bit more. Is it landlords and HOAs cannot prohibit religious cultural displays within certain limits. You'll have to dive into the law a little bit more to find out what those limits are, but I mean, if somebody wants to have a nativity on their yard or some other thing you can't really prohibit that from happening. I'm not sure what they're talking about, the required lease updates, but I believe that you're going to have to update your lease to reflect that language.
And wasn't it also that did they increase, was that under SB 201, that you now had to give them 60 days notice or something like that? Is that what I heard?
No, I don't know about that one. So, and then following detailed rules for temporary removal for during repairs. This one's a big one. AB 121, landlord tenant fee overhaul. I'm not always in favor of things that come out of Carson City and laws, but I think they did a good job on this one, make to the benefit of the tenants and also reasonable for landlords. The first thing is landlords must offer at least one rent payment method with no fees and bank information required for the tenant. So what does that mean? That means that for a property manager, we have to allow them to pay their rent in a way that doesn't require them to pay a fee for the processing or to us. So that means cashier's check, money order, cash, which I highly encourage you never take cash for rent because it's a tough thing to track, but they can pay it that way. But we have ways that they can pay online. There's a fee to pay on that. We have a feature they can pay with a credit card, but we encourage them not to pay because it's extremely expensive to them. But they can always come into our office with a check, cashier's check, or money order, or cash, which we discourage. So the next one, payment processing fee imposed by an online portal provider must be disclosed in the lease agreement. So if you have a company, so if you say you use Zillow, because Zillow offers this service that they can take payments through. I'm not sure what the whole details are. If there's a fee in there, you have to disclose that in the lease agreement. And these are effective October 1st, so you've got time to make changes, by the way. Landlords are prohibited from charging more than or in addition to the fee imposed by the online portal provider for online payments. You cannot profit from the tenant paying rent. They've restricted that. So, landlords must provide prospective tenants with a copy of the rental agreement upon request. Keep in mind that last part, upon request. That doesn't mean you have to give every tenant your lease agreement. That doesn't mean that it has to be posted. If they request it, a copy of it, you need to give it to them. If you're doing normal leasing, you're going to provide it at the time that they're going to be, once they've decided they're going to rent the place, they're going to have an opportunity to review it and sign it. So most tenants, I suspect, will probably not ever request that.
Like another copy? Because don't they usually get a copy when you rent a place?
They do, but if they want a copy to read through before they sign,
Oh.
which they always get a copy before they sign because they got to sign it. So most cases we're following that law. But if they request it, send them a copy. This is our, even if this is my boilerplate lease, you just provide that to them so they're informed. Application fees must be refunded if the unit is rented to another and the landlord did not utilize the fee for the stated purpose of conducting background, credit, income, and other screening of the applicant. So what does that mean? You gotta love lawyers when they write things, because this all came from Karzaz's law, their legislative session summary. So what does that mean? You know, does that mean if you offer a property, you had 10 applicants that paid applications, and you choose one, and does that mean you got to return 9 application fees? No. But if you don't run their background check, you need to return the fees for those that you did not run the background check on. So say 5 of them you ran the background check, the other ones you were holding off because you wanted to see where the first 5 are, and so you just need to refund those to those tenants. This was, and I think this is a good law, because there are some management companies that just have you apply for everything and never refund it, and then they turn around and not ever run the background check, and that's just not right. We don't do that because we've always done it. If we didn't run their background check, we just refunded it if they asked for it or not. So let's see where we're at. Mandatory monthly charge, including base rent, must be stated in the lease agreement as a single figure. So if you have a fixed cost each month, you need to disclose that as a total, what they call it, a total maximum total periodic rent. So that would include the rent. If you have some fixed utility costs, that would be included in that total number. If you have any monthly service things that you charge there, that just needs to be included in that. So in our leases, we have the monthly rent, other fees, and then a total amount. Only thing we have to change is, it's somewhere in the lease, we're going to have to itemize the fees that we potentially have to charge, or could charge, and or do charge. So, any questions on that one? Because that's one of the biggest parts of this that we'll probably have to change in most leases. So, and then tight restrictions on how utilities are billed. If they are not included in the maximum total periodic rent. So, do you guys know what RUBs are? Tell me what RUBs are, because I can never remember what the R stands for half the time anyway. Ratio, thank you. So that is, if you like mobile home parks, if you ever done anything with mobile home parks, you have one electrical bill or meter from the power company, and then individual meters at each space that meter that space usage, that's part of the master meter. That's one way of that billing. The other is if you have a multifamily place that's been converted from a single family home and the meter's all on one, and you're billing a portion of that utility based on square footage or what some other way, it's a variable utility. That amount is not going to be included in the maximum total periodic rent, but it has to be disclosed on that. So there's a lot more information that I cannot cover here, but if you want to write down that link at the top there, Carzaz has done a good job of breaking this down. And so since I'm using their stuff, they do have an office here in Reno if you ever need attorneys for them. So let me know when you're ready for me to move on. And you can always just email me and I'll send you the link too. So ready? Okay. All right. Next one, easement. You know, these are minor laws. They're just changing some of the rules with easements and mortgage modifications. Multifamily zoning reform is just allowing the local governments must allow multifamily or mixed use housing by right on commercial land. So if you have a mixed use place, you can have that. There can't be restrictions on that. And then the last one, which is I'm not quite there yet. This one's much more if you're managing or own a large multifamily property, you're going to be required to do background check on your employees. You have to manage and have a management plan for the keys to protect access to the property. And must maintain a log for the keys. So, and then supportive housing and pets rights. If you are doing anything with HUD or housing grants, you're going to have to allow at least one pet in a unit by this law. So,
Is that with being able to charge them for the pet or without?
they didn't go into that. I believe you should be able to still charge on that. I'm actually pretty positive you can. This means that those type of properties, you can't say no pets. You got to at least allow one pet. So, yes.
In clarity, I heard from someone that's teaching the property management class that you can't charge for a service animal, right?
That is correct. Yeah, and we're going to go into that a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
But yes, you
Double
cannot.
clarifying, 'cause I wanted to make sure.
The whole ESA service animal thing is I don't know what's.
It's not always a scam, but it usually is a scam.
It's fun. And I'll tell you later what I do to avoid having as much fun with it directly as a property manager. So, all right. Now, 211. This one it talks about that it's requiring you as a landlord to maintain your property. And I'm sure none of you guys are slumlords here. But if you don't maintain your property and the tenant files something and it falls into the rules that you're not maintaining habitability, they could take control of the maintenance, put it in receivership, and push towards you having to get that repaired. So that's, yeah. And this is, honestly, I may not like some of the things with this, but the premise of this law, making sure that we manage or have properties that are habitable for our tenants, is important. So, just maintain your property so you don't have to worry about it. It's easy enough. So, all right, so the foundations of multifamily. How many of you have a multifamily property that has 10 or more units that you own? How about 5 or more? How many units?
8,
8? Okay.
the biggest structure, right? Not,
Just, yeah, your
Like
property,
single
it can have
property.
multiple buildings on it.
yeah.
Say, for example, we manage a property that has 53 units. It has 3 buildings and a house. So, and then we have another property that has 48 units and all in one building. Tell me, in your thoughts, what's the difference between managing and owning a single-family property compared to say, a larger multifamily property?
Just add a 0 on everything.
Mostly cost, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what else? What do you think?
Staff.
Staff,
Yes, you have payroll.
potentially
You have
payroll.
maintenance,
Mhm.
lots of things.
I mean, there's not much. I mean, the premise of management is still management, but the level of management and the details that you're into with a multifamily property is a lot. I think I want to say a lot different, but it's different. There's more that you have to look at. There's more that you have to manage. So I kind of want to go through, just some different categories. So
One thing too is that you've got to be really in tune with the feedback you're getting from the tenants. In case one of them turns into a freelance pharmaceutical rep, you got to be able to get them out before the good tenants move.
yeah, resident retention is one of those things.
You have to have
I mean, it's important for a single-family home to make sure you keep those tenants if they're good tenants, because when they move out, there's no income coming in. But it's important also in a multifamily, because if you have a mass exodus because you don't take care of things and there's problems, which is the reason why I picked up both of these properties, is because things weren't being taken care of by the prior property manager. So.
Not that bad, but you
Yeah.
have to have, even if you have a single family, just one unit over 300, you
Mhm.
have to have a process.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a system, you forget this, you forget that. It's.
Okay, I'm going to invite you up here. You can take it, because those are things that we're going to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about it. So, revenues and pricing structures. Is how you approach rent the same as you would with a single family? Why is it different?
It's more of a commodity. It's easier to compare pricing on 2-bedroom apartments because all 2-bedroom apartments are more similar than.
To a
houses.
point. I can kind of pick that apart too, because you got a 2-bedroom located in, say, on G Street in Sparks, compared to the 2 bedrooms that are sitting right by that new complex that was built. I can't think of the name of it, but you can see it off the freeway, the multicolored building.
On Arnie.
Deco.
Deco, I think, is what it's called. I mean, their price probably can't price them the same, because they're probably asking $1,600-1,700 or more for a unit there, compared to even $2,200-2,500 for down on the Reno Experience for a 2-bedroom. But yet you try to list that decent 2-bedroom built in the 80s, 90s, in decent condition. You try to get $1,500-1,600, it's just going to sit there. So there is some structure in comparing to your location, types of building, age, amenities that factor into the rent that you may not have to look at in a single family home. It's there in a single family home, but it's not at the level that you're talking about here. Utilities. How do you bill your utilities in a multifamily place? How do you bill them in your big place?
That's a good question.
I know you have a property manager that does that for you, so you don't worry about it.
They pay, I think we pay for the water, because that's not metered separately, but electric and gas they pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're
that's
billed
usually-
back like some type of
Yeah.
prorated garbage, like distributed among all the tenants.
So, and that's typical, you know, typically outside of water in multifamily, gas and electricity is separately metered. Water is by building or by property. Trash is usually service is by the property and can be billed an amount per month for the tenant. You can bill sewer. Most places probably don't, they just include that in the rent. Water typically stays within the rent, but can be billed separately. So there's strategies with utilities, how you can charge those. Pet fees. How many of you allow pets in your properties? Do you charge a fee for that pet?
I think so.
Yes. And
Why should you charge?
because
They do
it
wear and tear on the
occupies the
property.
space. Yeah.
Wear and tear, the potential, even though kids are probably worse, but we can't decline kids. Unless it's a 55 plus community. So, but yes, you're right, there's extra damage. It's also a privilege to have a pet in a property. And that privilege has a cost to it. It's a revenue stream for you. Don't turn down reasonable revenue streams, but don't be a junk feed type of property owner either, because that doesn't help you.
So what do you recommend with pets? Cause I'm not very comfortable with this at all in terms of how much deposit to ask for, whether it's refundable, whether I should be charging them a pet fee. Most of the time when I get animals, they're service animals, in which case we're not
It's a
doing
different
that.
story, and we'll cover that a little bit. But so pets, as a
Did they change it if you could charge an extra deposit for pets?
no,
Or, oh, so we do an extra deposit because they have a pet, but it's not a pet deposit. Because if it's a pet deposit, you have to prove that the damage was caused by the pet. But if it's an extra deposit,
Yeah.
then
yes,
you can charge
and a
back
great
for
point.
it.
And we do that. We it's not a pet deposit; it's an additional deposit.
And then
So
the pet
so
rent,
when we go in front of the judge, words matter. So
What do you call it?
just an additional deposit.
additional deposit. So we can use it for whatever. So if the pet was the greatest thing in the property, and the kids and the parents were the worst, we can use the entire deposit for whatever we need to do.
So what's a reasonable pet deposit?
They can range between 300 on up to 1,000.
So if it's.
I don't recommend really high.
100.
Ours average about 500 per
Okay.
pet.
So do you make that additional deposit non-refundable? Or-
No.
Okay.
No, it's just like it's an additional deposit. So if we don't use it, we got to give it back. If we use some of it, it has to be itemized and disclosed to the tenant when we do, and that all has to happen in 30 days.
Okay, and do you do that plus a pet fee?
We do a monthly pet fee.
So,
So-
like a pet rent.
So in our case, we charge a pet fee because we offer a pet guarantee in our business to our owners. So if there is pet damage, we'll cover up to $3,000 to fix it, and the tenant pays a monthly fee to us. Pet rent, on the other hand, is treated as rent,
Okay,
and ours range between $30 to $75 a month, based on the
Some of those
pets,
depend on the size of the.
based on the size of the animal usually.
what was the value you just gave?
30 to 75.
Okay, so then if you pet rent, they get to keep, pet fee, you get to keep because you have this guarantee. And
That's
at
what
the-
we do.
Right, and at the end of it, if the property is pristine, do you keep the pet fee?
Yes, because it's a service.
Okay,
It's a privilege.
okay.
It's a fee that the tenant pays. It is also for you as a revenue stream, for the risk you take to allowing that pet in your property. So. Okay. Service is the other thing on revenues and pricing structures. If you offer services and different things, we offer a liability program and a few changing filters and different things like that. You can charge those type of things in that. So when you're thinking of multifamily, which is the same in a single family, but it's just on a larger scale, you got to be strategic in your pricing of what you're doing, because you are in this to make money, and that money is required to maintain that property and continue to provide a good service to your tenants and support yourself too, if it be in retirement, your livelihood, or whatever it is. So, operation processes. Here, this is your. Should I just hand this over to you?
It's a nightmare if you don't have one.
Yes, if you do not have, I mean, managing a couple single-family homes. I mean, you have 6, right? And I'm sure that you have processes to manage those 6. I've heard you talk before. On a multifamily, there's a lot more moving parts in there. So in a property that's got our 53 unit property, we got 3 buildings and a house. The house was built a long time ago. It has its personalities. The other buildings are enclosed entryways to the units. They got a security system to get in that doesn't work. We got to figure out what's going on with that. It's in an area close to Sparks High School, so we got this big lot that's inviting to these kids to go hang out and smoke under the trees in the back, paint graffiti. There's a lot going on in this property. So some key areas that you want to think about as you're managing your property, which is you do in your single family, but you do on a larger scale on a multifamily. Your leasing processes, your criteria for screening, everything you do with the tenants has to be consistent. Because if you have 53 units and typically well over 100 tenants, responsible parties there, and you have to treat everyone the same, because you can't treat one person because you like them a little bit better than the other, because that will end up you in trouble and in court or fined by housing. So having a consistent leasing process and standard, which includes screening, is very important to do that. Rent collection process. You're talking collecting rent for 6 houses on steroids. If you don't have a consistent process and communicate that to your tenants how they can pay rent, you're going to be chasing things down for a lot. You're going to be spinning your wheels trying to get things done if you don't have a consistent process of how to get rent paid, and making it as easy as possible for that to happen. Maintenance processes. You know, managing a single family home, it's usually you get a work order once in a while, unless you get some tenant that's a little anal and everything's broken and they want it all fixed. Again, you're taking this on steroids. But if you don't have a maintenance process to how you're handling the maintenance in your multifamily property, you're going to get worn out and burned out very quickly. Part of that process is having partners. You talked about, I was pointing at you, Austin. But yes, he is my partner because he does a lot of the boots on the ground for me.
Yeah.
I was talking about Frank back there. Talking about he's trying to find partners to help him do it. You need to have the right partners. That means vendors that can go in and do things. If you, in a single family home, you can maybe as an owner, landlord, go in and do your maintenance on your own. I don't advise you to do it on a large scale property. Even if that's your only job, I think you're going to burn yourself out.
One of the things you can do to make the maintenance easier is to standardize as much as possible. Everybody has the same kitchen faucet, same bathroom faucet, you can keep a couple of spares.
Same paint color.
Same paint, oh, that's important.
So,
Including our house was painted the same.
yes, consistency is your friend. Actually, consistency is your friend all the way through the things we're going to talk about here. So, resident retention. You know, yes, a single family home, you lose a tenant, you're not making any money while that house is vacant. But if you're not focused on taking care of things for all of your residents in your property, you'll start seeing a mass exodus of people leaving. And what that turns into is when they leave, there's turnover costs, there's vacancy costs, and everything that's tied to that. So being mindful what's going on in your property in a multifamily property is important. If you're a landlord or an owner or managing a multifamily property, being on property consistently is key. Talking to tenants, even in the parking lot, is key. How often do you go to the properties, Austin?
Like every week.
At least every week, usually a couple
Multiple
times a
every
week. So, building improvements and plans. Yes, single family homes need to do new roofs, things break. Your capital expenditures on a single family home is probably not the same, which you may argue that a new roof at $25,000 or $20,000 is huge. But take that into a multifamily. A new roof there, you're talking could be close to $100,000 because a lot of times they're not shingle. They're the membrane type, and those are not cheap. So you want to plan your maintenance. In a large multifamily property, you're going to have asphalt that needs to be patched, repaired, replaced on a regular basis. More landscaping. Paint, which you probably don't want to do, paint your whole property all at once, especially hallways and things like that. So you want to have a plan to take care of one building or one floor at a time to manage and spread out your costs. So you got to look at things just a little different with that.
Yeah.
And then tracking and improve on I meant to put improvements. But basically, you're keeping track of what you need to do. Planning capital expenditures is very important on a large property like that. So,
And also tracking expenses, right? You're
Mhm.
tracking expenses there as
Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
not just improvement.
Yeah.
Because if I have to start all over again, because you could make money renting 1 unit or 300 units. I would learn QuickBooks or be good at Excel.
yeah.
You just can't
Well,
write everything.
Most of us probably won't take it down to this level, but you think about that. You have, let's just use that 53 units. You say the average rent there is, we'll just say 1,000 for simple math. What percentage of that rent should you allocate for capital expenditures? You probably won't go down that low of a micro level, but you got to always think about, how am I going to pay for that new roof that I may need in 10 years? Because if you don't plan for that $100,000 roof replacement on that building, and you all of a sudden need to, because it's just not repairable anymore, it's going to affect your cash flow. You're not going to be able to come up with the money, which means you either have to borrow the money and then have to service it. If you plan ahead for those funds, then when that time comes, you can write the check. How many of you guys are familiar with HOAs and the reserve studies? What is a reserve study?
It's, when I had my law practice in California, we did a few condo conversions. So we had to do reserve studies, and we had to figure out how old is this roof, and what's the life expectancy, and how much will it cost to replace it when that time comes. And you know, so you have to figure out what's the wear and tear on the items, how long are they expected to live, and make sure that the HOA has enough money in reserves to pay for the roof when it needs to be done, and the exterior paint, the pool pumps, everything.
Yeah.
Plus, isn't there also a requirement that the HOA has to have a minimal amount
Mhm.
of reserves at all times?
Trying to remember, I think you have to be, by law, you have to be a minimum of 70% funded, but don't quote me on it because
Yeah.
I don't manage HOAs anymore, and I'm not up on the laws because I hated those.
Because I just see a lot of special assessments going on right now, because even though they planned ahead, the cost of materials
And that's-
labor is just.
And that's because the board is not planning ahead.
Or couldn't even anticipate it, like insurances are doubling.
Yeah. Some of those things, you're right. And so bringing it back to the multifamily, those are some of the things that you gotta plan for, you gotta think about. You know, if inflation is X% a year, you gotta think about, okay, that roof is gonna cost, we're estimating that roof to cost me $100,000 a year now, but in 10 years, it's gonna cost me $120,000. So you gotta, that's part of the planning of it, and that's kind of a big difference between, I say, a single family home and a larger complex.
So are you speaking from the perspective as a landlord or a property owner or both?
I am speaking from,
Like property manager or?
mostly from my experience as a property manager, but I'm very aware of
So you
being
help your
responsible for
clients.
facilities in my past, that kind of planning, the capital planning for your operation, if it be a retail store,
Mhm.
a commercial building, or multifamily, you have to plan for that maintenance, you have to plan for those capital expenditures.
A side note to what you're talking about right now, but in the last legislative meeting, didn't they increase the amount, the budget that you can assist somebody to do repairs with without needing to have a license? And that the handyman can now do more without having to have a contractor's license?
I'm not aware of that one, I may have missed that.
I just know about it, I just don't know. the
If they
details.
increase that for the handyman, that's great.
Yeah,
Because for you as a landlord, if a handyman can come in and do the work, and they do, a lot of them do just as good, if not better, than some contractors, and typically 2/3 the cost. And we try to use that handyman as much as possible, because it's your money. I don't wanna spend any more we have to get the job done, so.
I think it's $7,500 that you could use without using a contractor, use a handyman, $7,500.
Yes, actually, I think I'd have to look it up again, I think it's
I
more
think
like
it's
10,000,
yeah.
so, per property. But the handymen are still limited to 1,000, I think, so,
We just upped it for next year to 2,000.
oh, that's good. Thank you, I'll have to dig into that. Austin, write that down so we can look up at that.
Okay, writing it down.
He hears me say that all the time. So-
Yes.
So operational processes, you gotta run it like, you gotta be serious that you're running it like a business, not looking at things. So, multifamily counting. You wanna say accounting is accounting, that's true. But the need for the detailed accounting and planning, and I don't want to say that you don't need to do this level of detail planning and accounting for single family if you own one property or multifamily, but the need for it is so much more important. There are so many moving parts in a multifamily property that you got to be budgeting. You got to be putting together a budget of what's going on and looking at that budget on a regular basis. And when it's not following that budget, you got to be adjusting it. Financial reports. You got to be looking at your financial reports, seeing where you're bleeding, where you're succeeding. so you can fix or capitalize. Performance tracks and KPIs, key performance indicators. Find the key performance indicators for your property and watch them. They will keep you focused on what you need to do. And then we've already talked about this, but capital expense planning. You need to plan for those big expenses, because the next thing that will hurt you is if you're not planning, it's going to catch you in the cash flow department. So just quick question, an accounting question. Who's an accountant in here? Who knows accounting? I've got an accounting degree, but I don't do anything in accounting. My wife does all the accounting in our business. She doesn't have an accounting degree. So, go figure. But she's way better at the details than I am. I'm not that detailed person. But, where was I go? Oh, cash flow. What's the difference between a cash flow, your cash flow, and your net income? So you took a cash flow statement and a profit and loss or income statement.
Liquidity?
What?
I would say liquidity.
Liquidity is part of it. That's actually a big part of it. So,
Cash flow counts your mortgage, whereas your net operating income does not.
kind of right. So your P&L is showing your maybe you said it right. I'll explain it and then maybe we come together. So your profit and loss shows all your income, all your expenses. Cash flow statement shows what's happening to your cash. So why is that different? Because isn't everything in the income statement cash related? What's a non-cash expense?
Well, you got depreciation, and you also have your principal payments that will show up on a.
So I think that's what you were saying, right?
Mortgage.
Mortgage, the principal. So yeah. So the mortgage payment, you're sending out cash paying the mortgage payment, and the principal is not an income statement line item. Whereas depreciation is an expense line item, but is not a cash change. So why is cash king? Why when they say somebody says cash is king?
That's a philosophical question.
I don't know. Is that too deep for a late evening on a Wednesday night?
I say debt is king.
Yeah. Maybe Ginger needs to bring food in here for those type of questions. What pays the bills? Cash. If you don't have, you have an income statement that says you made $100,000, but your cash says that you have $5,000 in the bank. You only can pay $5,000 of bills. So that comes back to capital expenditure planning. Going back to that asphalt, the parking lot, that roof, is planning ahead to make sure you have the cash to cover those expenses. Kind of following the rule of the reserve study that HOAs do, but at a property level for your own property. Does that make sense? Clear as mud?
Well, it's not clear.
Yeah, thanks, son. All right. How much more time? I'm good? Okay. So profit, loss, KPIs. I mean, we've probably hit on all these in our conversation already, but understanding your property's financial story. Where do you make money? Where are your costs? Where are your potential costs? What are some of the opportunities? Do you guys know what a SWOT analysis is? What is it?
To assess where your strengths and your weaknesses are.
Yeah. So it's
Weakness.
strength, weakness, opportunities, threats. Knowing your property's financial story, you should be doing a SWOT analysis. You should be looking at what's good about your property. What's good about your property, Mitch? What's your property strength?
don't
Can I
have to
pick
go
on you?
there. Sure. I don't go there very often.
That's probably a strength.
Yeah.
But actually, not joking aside, if you have a property manager doing that, and no offense, but sometimes when an owner's involved too much with the property manager, that is not a strength. That is a weakness. And please don't take offense to that, but this is based on experience. Some owners don't help us help them.
No, sometimes if I've had different property managers, and if I have to always like double check their work, like that's not working out for me.
Yeah.
Like
But what's the strength of your property?
it's all renovated,
It's all renovated.
everything's new.
What's a weakness? Say, I'm putting you on the spot.
Sometimes the tenants are.
Yeah?
We do a lot more with commercial stuff, and so just like there's always a turnover,
Mhm.
but there's multiple units in a building, so there's always like leasing up. Like when something's 100% full is kind of rare,
Yeah.
just because there's always leases
So-
coming due and all others being signed.
So you got to plan for vacancies in your planning. Another one is planning for delinquencies. Tenants can be a weakness and a strength. Location can be strength and weakness. Age of the property. What are some opportunities that properties have? That some of your properties have. You can throw out single family stuff too. That's fine. Because I think they're a little bit universal. So
Low rent's always an opportunity.
it is. Can be.
Big expense that someone doesn't want to pay for.
Mhm.
They'll sell it.
Appreciating neighborhoods.
Appreciation's an opportunity. What's an opportunity that you could act on as a property owner?
Amenities.
Amenities. I've heard from somebody in this room several times that if you add a washer and dryer to the unit, the rent can go up a lot more. Is that an opportunity? So, what are some threats?
Employment,
Employment?
Rental.
Yours or the tenants?
not mine. Theirs.
Employment. Changing the dynamics of neighborhoods.
Competing rentals.
Competing rentals, new properties coming in. A lot of those things. Changing laws. Thank goodness we're not in California.
HOAs.
So, HOAs can be a threat. They can also be a benefit, a strength, depending on the type of tenant you're pursuing.
Property.
Most of the time as an HOA, with multifamily, you're not facing an HOA. But isn't your property an HOA in some ways? Except the homeowners association is you, the property manager. And so you have to have rules and stuff. So we'll come to that one. But yeah, you need to know your NOI. What are you making? You need to understand your financial statements. What a cash flow statement is, what a balance sheet is, what the P&L shows you. And you should be looking at those and seeing where you can capitalize on what's going good and quickly fixing things that are not. If you're not looking at your financial statements at least monthly for your multifamily property, you're losing money. I can guarantee it. Because you're not on top of it, you're not going to be able to react to problems in a timely manner. We've talked about the cash flow statement, the importance of that, KPIs, understanding the key things that are going on. Benchmarks, industry benchmarks. There's benchmarks out there for large multifamily properties. You should be looking at those. How do you compare to what's going on as Reno in the whole, or as the state of Nevada? Typically, you're going to find nationwide, most likely, but it's good to know. Vacancy, delinquency losses, you need to know that you're going to have them. It may not be bad as when a single family is empty, you're not making anything. Again, if you have a lot of vacancy and you're not turning things quick, that's costing you. And then untapped opportunities. Look for opportunities to capitalize and grow. All right, here's the fun part, the legal part. You guys gonna wait for that? There's several things. I emphasize a little bit more as a owner landlord. Your understanding of fair housing is key. Understanding of tenant landlord laws is key. So here's some of the things that get a lot of landlords and even property managers in trouble. Inconsistent screening processes. You've got to be consistent. You got to screen and have the same requirements for everybody in your property. If not, you're going to get in trouble, potentially get in trouble with fair housing. Those fines start about $10,000, $15,000. Discriminatory language in advertising. You probably wouldn't think that close to walking paths is a violation of fair housing, because not everybody can walk. And that, whatever you want to say, but that can be deemed as discriminatory. So you got to think about that. You cannot say in your advertisement it's close to a church. You definitely can't say that it's in a Hispanic neighborhood, or things like that. You've got to be thinking about and being very general. Best thing to do, talk about the property. What does the property offer? The area around it. What is that area around it? Close to a bus stop. Trails are okay, because people that can't walk can still use the trails. And things like that. But stay away from things that would be ability or race.
They say, talk about the property, not who's going to live there.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying that. It's not really good to say this home or this
Child
2-bedroom is
safety.
great for a young family. That's age discrimination. Maybe some people don't have kids. Maybe some people don't want a family. I mean, I understand we live in a weird world, but that's how you're going to protect yourself. Steering. I had this experience with an owner early on that says, I don't want to have you place anybody that has kids on the second floor. Problem with that?
Yes.
That's steering. We can't do that. I can't say, no, you can't live up there because you have kids, because that's fair housing, that's steering. Gets you in trouble. So be careful of that. Failure to provide reasonable accommodation. What's the number one reasonable accommodation that you as a owner landlord have to deal with? Service animals. That was a test. No.
We all fail.
And it's the number one thing that you're going to have to deal with in any property is someone saying that this is my ESA animal. And there's 15 pages of the rule from HUD that you need to understand. And we understand it, but we've also chose to use a third-party company to screen those people. Because they do this every day to make sure that the document's correct. Because that letter is supposed to be renewed every year. Did you know that? So if it's over a year old, they need to have it updated. There are certain rules if they have multiple ESAs. When does it become unreasonable for a number of animals? There's no rule.
Do you also require that their vaccinations or whatever or their licensing gets renewed every year? I don't know what pets require, but licensing is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, well, pet screening does that screening and it gives them a score. We don't require it, but if they don't, they pay a higher deposit. So we financially motivate them to be a little bit better pet owner. Yeah.
So, like, some insurance companies, for example, that would cover the property, will be discriminative towards certain breeds of
Mhm.
pets and whatnot. Now, that like it, per like some of these things, that can get a little questionable or muddy because of your insurance that you're trying to protect the property. Could that be?
And actually, Nevada has changed the laws on that. They even refined it a little bit more this year. Insurance companies cannot deny coverage for type of breed of dogs on your property. They definitely cannot deny coverage for a pit bull that's deemed a legitimate ESA animal. So, and that is Nevada law. So,
Thank you.
and then especially in multifamily, offering different lease terms to different places, especially in a multifamily. Who would consider giving a different lease term for a veteran? It's a nice thing to do for our veterans. I would like to do that. But if I gave say a little bit cheaper rent for the same unit to a veteran that I charge higher for a minority, I'm in trouble. You've got to be consistent. And especially in a multifamily property. Consistency is going to protect you. All right, let's go through the rest of it. We talked about emotional support animals. We've talked about leasing practices. Consistency there. Make sure that your leases are checked by your attorney. Don't download a lease off of the internet. I have seen plenty of those. And holy cow. You go to court with one of those, you're going to pay. So,
Literally and figuratively.
yeah, in several ways. Screening and agreement. Consistency. Follow your screening procedures. If all possible, hire a company to do the screening for you. The number one, and I've said this before, bad tenants target owner-managed properties. The reason why? They don't have near the resources that a property management company does.
He's right.
Doesn't mean.
He's right, they come around looking for me.
Yeah.
The catch being that before I owned my own properties, I used to have his job.
And it doesn't mean that you don't screen your tenants right, but they know that on
They're looking for a new.
yeah, most of the time they know that owner-managed people don't know the rules and laws, and professional tenants know to target you. That doesn't mean you have to hire me. I would love you too, but that's the end of my advertisement. But make sure you have the right partners, and there are screening companies out there will screen to your criteria. Just make sure your criteria is legal, because you can get yourself in trouble there too. But you can also be so dang tight that you can't place a person on a property. So we believe that, kind of look at the attitude that most people are good, and we're screening to find the ones that are not. And even the best screening, we don't get them all.
Do you do property checks, like go inside?
Mm-hmm. Right there. So let's talk about that. Single family or multifamily, if you don't get on the property, talk to that tenant, get into that unit on a regular basis, you're opening yourself up to risk and loss. Because if they know that you're not going to come by, they're going to do a lot of things that they shouldn't. And if you do come by, you're going to catch the ones that are going to do it anyways. And you're going to motivate the ones that are on the borderline to behave and do what's right. Talk to your tenants. You know, you don't have to be their friend. But you need to create an atmosphere that they feel that they can pick up the phone or they can come up and talk to you about issues.
I have found sometimes that they don't tell you when things have broken down,
Mhm.
even though I make it very clear that that's a high priority for me. I want to fix things as soon as they do.
Yeah.
But if I call them and check in, then they will tell me about the things that have broken down that they didn't bother to call me about.
One of the things, I don't know if it's my favorite thing of the first of the month when everybody starts paying rent, because that's the only time they get on their portal. They come in on their portal and they pay their rent, and then they put in a whole bunch of work orders of things that they haven't told you about for months. We taken over this property and we're communicating with the tenants a lot more than the prior company did. We're finding things that we reported to us, it's like, oh my gosh, why weren't these things taken care of? But if we open up to them, they'll communicate. What else happens when they communicate with us is when their next door neighbor has how'd you describe it, the freelance pharmaceutical?
rep.
Yeah. You want to have, your tenants can be your best resources of controlling bad behavior on the property. If you ignore their concerns, even if you can't do anything, you gotta at least recognize it. You'll be able to have a much better trust with them. And if they feel comfortable with you, they're gonna pay the rent on time, they're gonna take care of the property. And they're gonna stay longer.
And they're gonna tell you if there's any homeless people.
Well, that too. And that's resident retention right there. Just by communicating. Maybe harder for those that don't like to talk to people, but if you like to talk to people, go talk to your tenants. So, where am I? Landlord tenant laws, evictions, understand the eviction laws. You know, do your paperwork, document, understand that you have to have a process server serve eviction notice, 7 days notices and things like that. I had to break the news to an owner that decided to do something on their own. I said, you can't do that. You're gonna have to start over. They weren't happy, but you gotta understand those laws. Insurance, make sure you have the right insurance for your multifamily properties. The same thing as your single family. Talk to your insurance agent to make sure you have the right coverage to protect yourself. If that building burns down, do you have the right coverage to take care of your lost rent and the rebuild of that property and probably a few other things, but that's why you go to your insurance company and your agent. Security deposits. Understand the laws with how to handle security deposits. Know what the industry standard is for normal wear and tear. Because sometimes your opinion may not be realistic. You know, examples, we've had a tenant in a place for, I think, 5 years. And after 5 years, there's gonna be wear patterns in the carpet. And the owner wants how they gotta replace that whole carpet. No, there's a life expectancy of that carpet, 5 to 7 years. Most you could charge is a prorated amount of that. But if it looks like they maintained and cleaned it, and it was already 7 years old before that tenant moved in, the cost is yours, and you should replace it. Don't put that on the tenants. Habitability. We talked about that new law. Make sure that the basic habitability of your property is intact. Air conditioning, heating. If you provide one of those things, you're required to continue to provide those things. So if you provide a washer and dryer and they break, you got to replace them. You just can't say, I'm not going to replace them. It's on your own. That's part of the lease. So, but most importantly, you make sure you have a habitable place, safe place. One of your biggest challenges to that is mold, water damage. If you have water damage happen, get it quickly addressed. And you call. I'm sorry, I lost your Stacy, right? Yeah.
And then
I don't know. You guys have been to our office, I think.
Yes,
do you do carbon monoxide checks or annual, seasonal services on HVACs?
Depends on the owner. On that, we require to have a carbon monoxide detector in all of our units.
So you mentioned earlier, sorry, is it okay if I ask you a question?
Sure.
About, you said services, you were saying charging for services, fridge filters, you mentioned that. Who are you charging for this, the owner for that, or?
So HVAC filters is a good example. We have a service that, through a vendor, that mails filters to them. That's a revenue stream for us. It's a service to the tenant. It is a benefit to the owner because that provides filters for them to change. And if they do that, which some of them don't, it protects the life of that HVAC unit. So we try to look at how do we benefit. You know, one of our core values is win-win-win. We want to win, we want the tenants to win, we want the owners to win. You need to look at that in your case. Make sure that you're winning and the tenants are winning. So, we talked about property checks. Preventive maintenance is another one. Plan your preventive maintenance. That goes into servicing HVAC units. We're looking at this 53 unit place we just took over last month that has 53 AC compressors outside. They all, 90% of them look like original equipment. And I was telling Austin today, it's like, we better expect to be replacing about 5 of those a year. And that's part of the planning that we're gonna have to face with that.
But does that also mean you have to change the furnace and the AC? I mean,
This building was built in the this one was built in the early 2000s. So we're looking at 20 years on those units. Most likely, we're gonna replace both. Because if we just replace the condenser unit,
they may not match anymore, right?
well, they still have to go in to the other unit because of the coils. But you might as well replace them both for the long-term benefit. So,
Do you use home warranties?
I hate them, but
Then you're
I think home warranties are a nice protection for the owners, but they don't mesh very well with property management and the requirements that even you as a landlord face. If something breaks down like an HVAC unit, time is of the essence. The longer it takes you to get that addressed, and sometimes home warranties, you call them up, the vendor calls, and then they don't talk to the tenants, or they go out and then they just want to repair it, and you know, it's just that game, and it takes sometimes a long time to get things taken care of.
Sometimes in the summer, like AC, it's like 2 months lead,
Mhm.
you know, forget it.
And we get what, 14 days, is that for like essential?
14 days to address, to reasonably address it. An AC goes out, you're not gonna get it fixed in 14 days, you'll be lucky.
Yeah.
But as long as you are, you know, our expectation on an emergency thing or habitability thing is within 48 hours, which is less, we do less because it depends on the emergency to protect the property. But we're responding and making reasonable efforts to get it resolved within 48 hours. So, but you're supposed to make reasonable effort within 14 days to do it, which in my opinion is too long for habitability. So, that was it.
Yep, that was it.
So,